If you've been told everything looks normal, but you're still not pregnant, this episode is for you. Because let's be honest, normal is not optimal, and unexplained infertility usually isn't unexplained at all. Today I'm sitting down with a pharmacist-turned holistic fertility practitioner, Dr. Katie Wood. We dive into what gets missed in standard fertility testing, why so many women are pushed towards treatments without real answers, and what to look at instead when your body isn't doing what you hoped it would. If you've tried all the things, followed all the advice, and still feel stuck, stay with me. This episode may help you see your fertility story in a completely different light. Welcome to Faith Over Pharma, the podcast for women who want a different way to heal. I'm Susan Gladstein, holistic health practitioner and functional nutrition specialist, and here we explore faith-led, holistic approaches to hormones, energy, and symptoms that just keep getting brushed off. If that's you, you're in the right place. Before we jump into this amazing and incredible episode, I just want to talk about the Rooted Reset Retreat happening in Costa Rica this summer. This isn't a retreat where you're packed into the schedule or expected to fix yourself, like you don't even need to be good at yoga. It's a faith-led, fully supported week designed to help your body exhale and to step out of survival mode and to remember what it feels like to feel like yourself again. There's incredible food, time in nature, space to rest, reflect, and reconnect with God. Plus, lots of moments of laughter, deep conversation, and yes, spontaneous dance parties absolutely happen. If you've been carrying a lot physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you feel that nudge that it's time to step away and be poured into, this is your invitation. There's just a few rooms left. You can find all the details at rootedresetretreat.com. Today's conversation is one that I know many of you are going to feel deeply. I'm joined today by Dr. Katie Wood. She's a mom, a doctor of pharmacy, which, side note, we got to talk about that because before we hit record, we were talking about faith over pharma and how she's a pharmacist. But anyways, she's also a holistic fertility practitioner who has seen fertility from both sides of the system. And after over a decade in Western medicine, she started noticing a pattern. There were couples who were doing everything that they were told. They were getting normal labs, but they're still not getting pregnant. And after walking through her own fertility and pregnancy journey and realizing really how little support and education women are given, she felt called to advocate differently. Her work now focuses on helping women and couples nourish their body, mind, and spirit for fertility using a root cause holistic approach, which I absolutely love. And before we dive into the good stuff, I would love to just start with your story. Can you share what your own fertility and pregnancy journey looked like, what was missing in the care, and maybe some guidance that you received that ultimately shifted the way that you practice today?
Sure. Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, I was telling Susan how much I love her podcast name and just how ironic it is since I'm a pharmacist. But to take you back, so my husband and I started trying for our first child back in 2017. I was 27, 28 years old, something like that. And I was coming off of over 13 years of birth control. And I knew that we were going to start trying later on in that year. So I had talked to my OBGYN at my annual appointment. Is there anything I should be doing? I'm pretty sure she was like, oh, start a prenatal. And of course, my question was, when should I stop my birth control? And her advice was, you can stop and start trying in the same month. So that's exactly what I did. Side note, that's awful advice. Um, you should at least stop 3 months before you start trying, if not 6 months to a year. But anyway, so I had a lot of fears about having kids. Would I be a good mom? So I was in no rush to stop taking my birth control. So I took her advice. I stopped in the very same month that we started trying, November of 2017. And I had all full belief that I would be announcing to my family that we were pregnant at Christmas. And that did not happen. So another like side note is let's not put that pressure on ourselves, ladies, because it is not doing anybody favors, that's for sure. A few more months went by and I still was not pregnant. I had my annual with the same OBGYN again, and she really kind of dismissed it, brushed it off, because we had really only been trying maybe 3 to 4 months at this point. And my cycle actually came back right away after the birth control. It was still, honestly, it almost didn't even feel like I ever stopped the birth control. It was still a very regular 28-day cycle. And just really knowing that my cycle came back and it was regular, she kind of blanket stated, you're healthy, just keep trying, right? We were under 30, all the things were lining up where they're like, oh, you can just see what happens. And of course, I'm very like type A. It was making me feel like a failure that we weren't getting pregnant. Like I didn't really have a lot of the knowledge that I have now that it takes some time, right? It can take upwards of a year for about 80% of couples. So I went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. I would say in an unhealthy way, just because I really wanted to control the process. I think this was the first instance in my life where you can't outdo to get the result, right? And that was really frustrating for me, because I was a good student. I could excel at things and get the result that I want. And this is the one thing that I could not do that. So it was a huge life lesson. Um, Started seeing an acupuncturist about 7 to 8 months in. And that I didn't know it at the time, but that would ultimately be a huge game changer for me. We really found that the birth control had really taken a toll on my body, as it does many women. It can deplete you of the very nutrients that are necessary for fertility and pregnancy. I had a lot of blood stagnation and just a lot of things that we worked on. I had switched OBGYN offices to a closer one to home, started working with the midwives, hoping that they would be a little bit more natural minded, would give me more advice. And unfortunately, they didn't. It was kind of the same thing like, you're healthy, just keep trying. You should schedule a fertility specialist appointment ahead of time at the 1 year mark, because if you wait, they'll probably be booked out for a few months. That was basically the advice I was given. No one ever drew any labs or anything. So like I didn't know my hormones, my thyroid, my vitamin D. I knew absolutely nothing. Well, fortunately, by the grace of God, I think it was a month and a half after that appointment, I got my positive pregnancy test. And ironically, it was after a month, August, that we didn't think that we could get pregnant because he was there, I was here. We thought we missed the fertile window, so we kind of, we just thought the pressure was off of the month. Um, and I attribute a lot of that to working with this acupuncturist. I think having someone there to listen to you, to offer advice, and really give me any sort of feedback in terms of like connecting back to my body and all of those things, was super helpful. Pregnancy was good. It was a healthy pregnancy. I had a few scares in the beginning, but nothing really stuck. Um, I think it's called a subchorionic hemorrhage or something like that. Like there was like a blood clot or something, and luckily that healed on its own. I was a carrier for some genetic thing, so my husband had to get tested. He was not, so we didn't have to worry about that. But other than those two things, the pregnancy was great. I did learn that also in the pregnancy, there was like no good advice given. The only nutrition advice they gave me from a midwife, and I'm not bashing midwives. I think it all comes down to the individual. So this individual practitioner told me if I wanted to eat deli meat, I should microwave it. Like that's like the worst advice. Like deli meat in and of itself is not great for you, and then to throw it in the microwave is like 10 times worse. I digress. I had done a lot of my own research. Lily Nichols has a book, Real Food for Pregnancy. I was reading that, learned so much. So I was shocked when that was the only advice that she gave me. And I even had to really advocate for myself to get my vitamin D checked with all my other labs. So learned a lot, did a birth course, Mama Natural's birth course, and learned a lot about doulas. So we decided we would hire a doula, we would go for a natural hospital birth, hired a doula, and basically halfway in my pregnancy, we're like, we're going to do a home birth. Because my doula had a home birth. She lived, ironically, coincidentally, lives in the same small town that I live, and we're like 30, 35 minutes from any hospital. So she really kind of reassured us that it's possible, you can do it. So we had a home birth. It was the most empowering experience ever. I wish that, I mean, it was hard. I had back labor. It was really hard, but just the care that I received and being able to trust in my body and have that experience. So lo and behold, after experiencing all of those different aspects, fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I realized how much is missing in the Western care model in terms of supporting women and couples. And it's so sad. It's so sad. I had really already been doing my own like personal awakening in terms of, oh my gosh, all these products are actually really toxic. Like I used to love Bath and Body Works. So I was on like this personal healing experience, and then that whole fertility pregnancy experience just added to it. And I really started becoming unaligned with pharmacy. I'm just giving these people statins and insulin and slapping band-aids and all these problems and these poor, poor children who are on, lots of stimulants and then giving them Benadryl because they can't sleep at night. And, retail pharmacy unfortunately just did not give me the opportunity to really educate these people in terms of, hey, if you really made these nutritional and lifestyle changes, you could get off of this insulin, you could get off of this statin. So in 2021, left retail pharmacy and started my business. And I've been coaching women and couples ever since, and I've helped people conceive who were struggling for as much as 9 years, or people who are told that they could never conceive. And it has just been such a glorious and aligned shift in careers and yeah, so fulfilling. And I'm just constantly learning and like investing in my own personal and professional growth. Like you can't ever not keep learning or like know enough. So I'm always investing in myself so then I can help my clients and my people further.
Man, what a interesting and powerful story, and just how, God has led you on this path to help. I personally think there's no greater thing to help people who desperately want to have children to become parents. That is just something so near and dear to my heart. And I love that you mentioned about Lily Nichols' book. I had her on my podcast as the co-writer of that. There's a book about real food for fertility that
Yeah,
she
yeah.
co-wrote with Lisa Henderson Jack,
Lisa.
who I also had on the podcast. So if anybody's listening to this and they haven't really dove into, it's very sciencey, but in a really great way of talking
Mm,
about the things that we are taught, even nutrition wise, that are just flat wrong, and the studies that go behind that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. But I find that, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, but just what an injustice that like sixth grade health class did for us in teaching us about how our bodies work and the birds and the bees. We all, there's TV shows that talk about like, oh, anytime you can get pregnant. So we kind of just go into it thinking that that's the case. And even to your point, that your OB was telling you, oh, yeah, you can just stop birth control and get pregnant at the same time. And which is such terrible, terrible advice. But what I love is how you talk about as in the role that you play now, how you're always learning and researching and adapting and our views can change as we learn new information. And unfortunately, I don't think there are very few people I feel in the Western medicine lane that do that. We're kind of given the same old talk and antiquated information like, oh, if your AMH is high, like you're too old to have babies, which is not even true anymore. Like there's actually research that, so if you have a doctor that's telling you that, don't listen to them. But I'm sure that you see, if you have couples who are coming to you and they've done all the things, because I see this too, and they're still not conceiving, that there are some common things that are holding them back that you probably see regularly. I know I do. So I'm curious what those might be, because somebody's probably listening to this and they're thinking like, yeah, I've done all the right things and everybody told me my labs were normal and I just need to go to the fertility clinic and um, do IUI or IVF. And that's just, I mean, I got that a lot, especially because I was almost 40 when we started all over. So it was like, oh, you're running out of time. Everything looks good, but you just need to do IVF. And something about that just didn't sit well. And I've since learned a lot why that was. But what are some common things that you see that people are missing if they're going through the Western model?
Hmm. Well, just to start with, I think we only know what we know in any given time, and we have to give ourselves grace when we learn more that, oh, maybe I could have actually been doing better. So when you say like for couples who are already doing like everything or everything quote unquote right, I have a lot of people that come to me and they do think that they're doing everything right and they're eating healthy. But then when we start to talk about what it is that they're eating, I'm kind of like, sis, like you aren't even eating breakfast until 11 o'clock in the morning. And when you are, it's not that much. And it's focused on carbs. And you've had coffee before you ate and, drove 45 minutes to work and all these things. And I think that there's just so many different opinions and thoughts about what healthy eating looks like. And I do think that we are all bio individuals, and some ways of eating may work for some people better than others. But I do think when you're in a season of trying to conceive, the concepts are pretty much the same. And I do see where honestly probably 9 out of 10, we'll just say women, and we won't necessarily even talk about the partner at this point. 9 out of 10 women aren't actually hitting the marks in terms of their nutrition. So I would say nutrition is number one. And I think that it's one of the simplest things to change, and it can really move the needle on your fertility. I had a woman, she came to me with a 7 to 8 day luteal phase. Her doctor told her that was nothing to worry about. She knew that that wasn't right, just in her own research. So we started working together. Really, I was like, hey, start including more protein and fat in your breakfast. She got pregnant in like 2 cycles from a 7 to 8 day luteal phase. It was wild. It was crazy. So yeah, never dismiss just really the fertility foundations. It can have such a huge impact. But nutrition is one of the big ones that I see. I would say the second one is stress. We are all so stressed, and sometimes we don't even know it. Like, and I'm guilty of, I was definitely unaware of the level of stress I had back in the day. I remember I had Candida in 2020. I was working with a functional practitioner because at the time my PCP, I wasn't getting any real help. And she asked me about stress, and I'm like, oh, I'm not stressed. And I kind of like talk to her about my day to day, and she's just pointing out all these areas of stress that actually do exist in my life, like I don't know, working 12-hour shifts in the pharmacy, standing on my feet. I had a 45-minute commute to work. Like, so many things we don't perceive as stress, and a lot of things are so normalized, like having a schedule packed full with plans and things like that. And I'll tell my clients, like, do you think that you're going to be able to keep that up when you have a baby? And I kind of have to shift their perspective in like when you can make space in just your calendar right now, you're creating space for baby in that way. But if you keep going at the rate you're going, there is no space. There's no space for baby to come in. So I think really taking account of what your potential stressors could be, and it could even be exercise, right? We think exercise is healthy. If you're doing 5 HIIT workouts a week, and even during your luteal phase and your menstrual phase, like that is a stressor on your body. So just kind of taking a step back and maybe having someone like myself or yourself, Susan, with an outside perspective, because sometimes we can't see what others can see. And maybe you just don't know, right? You think you're doing good for your health by maybe fasting or doing these HIIT workouts or things like that. But realistically, those are all stresses on the body. So stress is a huge one. And then I would say toxins. We are bombarded with so many toxins that we cannot control, unfortunately, in today's world, that it's really about focusing on what we can control and doing it in a step-by-step manner so it's not overwhelming, because then that overwhelm is just going to add on to your stress bucket, and we don't want to do that. Um, so really looking at what are some toxins that we can control. Our laundry detergent. I think that that's a big one because if you think about it, it's going on your clothes, your bedding, your towels. My washer and dryer are on the second floor, right next to my bedroom. So anything I'm using is being emitted in the air that I breathe every single day. So like no laundry sheets, right? No, thank you. That's just going to put all the toxic fragrances in the air and things like that. That's just kind of an example, but I would say those are the top three. They're definitely, it's not all inclusive, but th those are some pretty big heavy hitters, I would say.
Yes, and I would say that what I see aligns with that as well. And I'm glad that you brought up the nutrition because I too get that, and even the sense of stress that when people, I'll ask people, well, how do you feel? And they might rate themselves at a 7 or 8, but they don't know that their scale is skewed because they've lived in this space of not feeling great and just accept it as normal. I know that was the case for me. I didn't know how bad I felt until I felt good. That was just, I had all the stomach problems and chronic migraines, and that was just normal and the cross to bear. So I think it's um obviously we're passionate about what we do, but I think it is very important to point out why having someone in the holistic space to tell you to put all the pieces together to look at that. Because when you go into a normal doctor's office, even a fertility clinic, very rarely do you have them asking, what do you eat? They maybe would run some labs and look at a single number, but like, are they telling you that your blood sugar is like a hot mess, which messes with all of your other hormones? And if your body's in this state of just surviving, it's not going to be like, yes, I want to bring another life form on that's going to suck more out of me. And I love, love, love how you brought in this idea of if there's no space in your schedule, there's no space for baby. Like that is, I have chills even just repeating it because it is such a valuable thing that when I was in the thick of trying to get pregnant and doing all of the things and filling my life and wearing busyness as a badge of honor, I'll tell you that is not anything that I ever once considered. So I appreciate that you said that. And I know that there's a lot of people who've just been given this like unexplained infertility diagnosis. Why is it that you think that that gets used so often? And what do you think it's actually pointing to underneath?
I think that unfortunately, the labs that are being drawn with your OBGYN, your PCP, or even our fertility specialist, they're very, very surface level. And I know this to be true because I have had so many women share the labs that they've had taken, and I'm like, this is it. This is what all you have. Like, I don't even have a full, I just have your TSH. I don't even have a full thyroid panel, or they only tested your FSH. Like, I don't even have the LH to compare it. There's lots of different labs. But basically, very basic level labs scratching the surface, and they're not drawing enough labs to give a full picture. It's like the puzzle is not complete. And so the labs that maybe they are drawing, they're coming back looking okay. And I'll give you an example. If they run a fasting blood glucose and an A1C, and those come back within a quote unquote normal range, then they think you're all good. But what they're missing is your fasting insulin. And I have had this happen where my clients will have picture perfect A1C and fasting glucose, and then they have a 20 for fasting insulin. And I can see that they're in the very early stages of insulin resistance. So it's something as simple as that. Or maybe they just draw your TSH and your TSH is within a normal range. But then if you do a full thyroid panel, oh, actually, and I have this right now in one of my clients, her TSH is fine. Her TPO antibodies were over 1,000. Like that's increasing your risk for miscarriage. That's making it very hard to get pregnant. It's a lot of things that are coming with that. And so unfortunately, people are being told your labs look normal. They don't know any better anymore because not everyone on this earth is a health practitioner. And of course, and you want to put that trust and faith in your provider, similar to what I did. She said, oh, I could stop and start in the same month. That's exactly what I did. And I will say, side note too, even as a pharmacist, I did not know. They do not teach, or at least when I was in school, they do not teach all of these negative effects that birth control can have on your body. I had no idea that I should really stop 6 to 12 months before and let my body adjust and like my nutrients restore and all those things. So um I think sadly it's lazy medicine, and that's just how they function. That's just the protocols that they follow. Like you kind of were saying earlier, I feel like people in the holistic alternative medicine space, like we're just life learners. We love learning. And when you hold a medical degree, and I can speak to this for myself, to obtain my pharmacy license, I have to do continuing education. And those continuing educations are a lot of times on very random topics, and you just kind of do it, you complete a quiz, and then that's it. So, yeah, doctors, especially when you're in practice for so long, they just follow what the protocol is. And a lot of times it's the protocol of like the institution, the hospital, or the practice, or whatever it may be. And I don't think that this is all doctors. I do think that there are some really great doctors out there. But for the most part, and they're just not digging deeper. And a lot of times maybe your labs do look good. And I've had that in my clients. Their labs look good, their cycle charts look pretty good. All right, let's dig a little deeper. I've really been enjoying getting into gut health and GI maps with my clients. Every single GI map I've had come back, they have all had H. pylori. So there you go. That's a huge, huge problem, and we want to address that. And then kind of going back, H. pylori isn't necessarily even the root cause. That's a symptom, but what is the potential root cause? Stress can be a really, really big one. So that's where we have to go back to those fertility foundations. You're not getting the education, the accountability, or the support in your doctor's office for those fertility foundations. And then you're not getting the um, digging deeper in the investigative work, looking at these labs so you can address them and then be like, okay, well, where did this come from? How did this happen? Let's take this back. Oh, you had a really stressful childhood because your parents got divorced when you were young. You lived off of Lunchables. And then if you're anything like me, you went off to college, you ate college food, you partied. Oh, you were on birth control, so that was depleting your vitamins. You were slathering Bath and Body Works all over your body, had a candle lit in every single room of your apartment. Like, right? It's crazy. So that's where unexplained fertility is coming from. And I think the sad part is people, they're not educated to know any other not I don't want like I'm not saying that people are dumb or stupid. I'm just saying they don't have the like the help, the knowledge that I have having gone to school and things like that to question it, right? And we have that trust in our doctor. So that's what I mean is like you don't know that they're wrong because they're your doctor. You think that they've done everything that they could possibly do for you, especially because you've been trying to get pregnant for years. So how could there be any stone left unturned? But sadly, there's many stones that are left unturned and I think that's when, like when you said you were being pushed to do IVF, but that didn't feel right to you. I think that that happens for a lot of women. It doesn't feel right to them, but they either don't have the confidence or they don't know enough to advocate for themselves.
Well, and
Or to,
also,
sorry.
like, if you're like I was, I wanted a baby like yesterday. So,
Yeah.
whatever is going to get me the baby that I wanted yesterday, let's fast track that. And I think
Mhm.
it's important. You talked about foundation several times, and that's very much what I advocate for that's missing. I mean, I kind of deal a lot more on the male fertility side, post vasectomy reversal. So, a lot of people are wanting to know how to improve sperm parameters without fully understanding that it takes, 72 to 90 days for sperm to
Mhm.
regenerate. So anything you did yesterday isn't going to show up for several months, first of all, because science
Yeah.
class in sixth grade didn't teach us that. But I always get the, hey, what supplement can I take to help with motility? And my question is, why is the motility not great to begin with? Like, let's work backwards because many times, and I'm sure you see this too, that people are throwing supplements because Mary's sister's cousin said it worked for them and they're piecemealing all these things together. What I often find is that people either are not absorbing any of the supplements that they're
Mhm.
taking. So you're basically just wasting all of that money and effort, or they're overdoing it and it's having the opposite. Like I had a girl who was taking all these different things, which were all fine and good in of themselves, but it shot her vitamin D levels to like 3,000 or something insane. Like
Oh, wow.
you don't want your vitamin D, you want it to be, most people are deficient and she was not because everything that she was taking had like doses of vitamin D. But if you're not looking at that, you just think, well, I have a grid prenatal and this thing is going to help me with this and this. I'm taking vitamin D and or like, I've had people that were taking vitamin D and their body wasn't absorbing it and they're still low. So like, let's figure out why that is. Maybe you're not
Hmm.
having enough fat, you're not taking it with K2, all of those things. So um, again, I think that's, just another foot stomper about why it's so important. But unfortunately, yes, we're trained to think that our doctors are the end all and they told us this is the case, everything looks good. But it's also when you've spent so much time that you're at that last ditch effort, like, oh, I'm going to go see a practitioner that specializes in this now, a holistic person, that kind of going backwards, if you will, to focus on those foundations feels like you're going backwards. When in reality, it's your shortcut. And I think that that's like something that I try to advocate for my clients. Like, you need to understand that, yes, I'm asking you to build those foundations. Not only is it going to help you once that baby comes and you're sleep deprived and you're trying to like breastfeed and all of your nutrients are going away. Like if you're not eating enough for you, you're not eating enough for your baby.
Hmm.
And so I love that, unexplained fertility is just kind of a lazy. I think it also comes from a lack of education because even a fertility doctor, they quote unquote sell you on their fertility treatments. Very rarely do I know of anyone who's gone into an IVF clinic where they've actually advocated for nutrition through that whole process of stimulating your hormones and getting those out of whack. And imagine if you have one egg and you give it an apple, now all of a sudden you're stimulating and creating all these additional eggs. So now you're that one apple you've been eating is cut into twelfths. So you're only getting a twelfth of the nutrition for your eggs. So you're working with less healthy things to begin with. But nobody tells you that. You go and spend, $30,000 on treatment, but your gut health is a wreck and your body is in survival mode and it doesn't work out the way you think, which is even more stress. Like I just think it's a disservice to
Mhm.
couples when all they want is a baby. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I know somebody is listening to this and they're like, OMG, I need your help. So I'd love for you to tell how can somebody connect with you and work with you?
Yeah, so I'm super active on Instagram. So you can find me at the underscore wellness underscore pharmacist. I have my website too, happynourishedmotherhood.com. There's lots of free resources on there. I have my podcast blog on there, some of my favorite products and things you can find as well. And then I do also have my podcast that oh my gosh, this is the fourth year going, which is crazy. Finally get pregnant naturally. And it's really all about this root cause that we've really been talking about on this episode. I think a really great episode for you to start with after having this conversation is episode 133. Stop relying on your doctor's basic fertility labs if you actually want to get pregnant. That's definitely a crowd favorite. And yeah, I could probably talk to you about this all day long, Susan, but I know that we need to end this episode, but it's
And
been really fun.
I love it too. And I'll make sure that that information is all in the show notes so they can go back and find it in case they're driving or folding laundry and missed it. But for the couple who's listening right now who feels discouraged and again, like they've tried everything, what would you say to them?
I would say that God created your body with ways for it, infinite number of ways for it to heal itself. And I think that that's one thing that I know from being on both sides of the counter, I'll say, that Western medicine and modern day society forgets. We forget that our body actually already has the tools that we need. We don't need red light sauna. We don't need the newest fertility supplement. Honestly, we just need to nourish our bodies, love ourselves, have a relationship with God, have a relationship with nature, have our community, and you can heal in so many ways with that. And obviously with something as precious as fertility, if you really want to like accelerate the path, I think just find someone like Susan or myself, or social media can connect you with so many different people across the world. You can literally, I'm in New York, I could be coached by someone in Australia and they could change my life, right? If you find someone that you align with, work with them, make that investment not only for yourself, but for your future family, if that's what you desire. And I always like to remind people it's not just about getting that positive pregnancy test, it's about your future health too. Because really, if you're struggling to get pregnant or maybe carrying a pregnancy, that's most likely a chronic disease down the line waiting for you. This is just kind of like the first call for help or the first sign that you're seeing because you're not able to conceive. So um, just remember you can heal yourself and it's okay to have support and ask for help along the way.
Man, that's so good. And I know that it's really hard for people to want to pay out of pocket for holistic services because we've been sort of taught by the system, just use your insurance. But I almost want to challenge that. The person that's listening that's reluctant to pay out of pocket because their insurance will cover their doctor's visits.
Mhm.
How is that working for you? And if it's not getting you the results you want, maybe it's time to do something different. Because there are people who genuinely like would jump up and down. I do this every time I get a pregnancy message that like I'm squealing, I'm sending your baby kisses, like genuinely over the moon when it's that aha moment. Like I've been trying for 5 years and now all of a sudden it's happened. Um, so anyway, I just kind of want to challenge that. Yes, it's uncomfortable to invest in yourself, but like I can't imagine looking at my babies and thinking like they weren't worth, whatever
Yeah.
time, effort, even just working on myself. I mean, it took me 2 years to get pregnant with my daughter. And in that 2 years, I was very intentional about the foundations, and they have served me so well now as a 45-year-old mother of a 5-year-old and a 9-month-old, like to keep up with them. People always tell me, like, I don't know how you do it in your age. And I'm thinking, like, no, it's the foundations I've been working on for the last 10 years that
Mhm.
have served me well. And I've always planned on being the grandmother that my grandkids are worn out by when they go back to my kids' house. Like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad to be home. Grandma wore me out. But that's me just thinking, like, I want to be
Yeah.
that, going down the slide when I'm in my 80s and 90s. And so that's the life I want to live today so that I can do that later on. So I appreciate you for taking the time to share all of your wisdom. I especially love having my first pharmacist on Faith Over Pharma. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate you. And I hope to do this again.
Yeah. I should have you on my podcast.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd be honored for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Faith Over Pharma. If this helped cut through the noise, share it with a friend who always asks, do you think this actually works? And if you're ready to go deeper through immersive retreats, phototherapy, or the Rooted Reset, you'll find your next steps at susangladstein.com.
Thanks for listening.